Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will discuss the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 5th January 2022. Now in today's newspaper, many of the articles have been covered previously in the DNS videos. So in today's discussion, we will try to take up the articles which are new. However, we will revise those topics which have already been covered in the previous DNS videos. So you should utilize this opportunity to revise the topics that have already been covered in the DNS. With this, let's start the discussion. This article on page number 6 has been written in the context of the visit of the United States Secretary of the State Anthony Blinken to Southeast Asia in December 2021. Now, this visit was seen as a very important visit because the US administration accords prime importance in its geopolitical strategy to the Indo-Pacific region these days. Now, the focus of the United States of America on the Indo-Pacific has primarily been seen in the context of the rising assertiveness of China. And it has been seen that the presence of the United States of America in the Indo-Pacific is primarily focused on countering this Chinese aggressiveness. However, the authors in this article have highlighted that the recent visit of the Secretary of the State of the United States of America was meant to project United States of America as not just countering the Chinese aggressiveness but also projecting itself as a reliable partner in the Southeast Asian countries as well as in the larger framework of the Indo-Pacific and the countries that are present in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, although this article is not very important for us from the examination perspective, but this will help us in understanding the broader geopolitics that is at play in the Indo-Pacific region, especially between the China and the United States of America, and how both these countries are trying to increase their influence in the Southeast Asian nations, which are key factors or key countries in the Indo-Pacific region. So let us try and understand the key points that have been highlighted by this article. Also, what is the geopolitics that is underway in the Indo-Pacific region, and also what are the key areas of competition between the US and China, and what has been the response of the Southeast Asian nations here. So the points that we discuss here will be important for us from the international relations point of view in the general studies paper 2. Although a direct question will not come about such an issue, but this is important for us to broaden our understanding of the geopolitics that is at play in this particular region. The term Indo-Pacific is used combinedly for the Indian Ocean region and the Pacific Ocean region. In this regard, China is one of the important players in the Indo-Pacific. This is because of the increasing economic might of China and also its assertion in the Indo-Pacific region. One of the prime examples of China's assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region is in the South China Sea region, where China has failed to recognize or China does not recognize the exclusive economic zone rights of the littoral countries of the South China Sea, including some of the countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, etc. Further, the China is trying to increase its influence through the Belt Road Initiative and the various infrastructure development that the China is undertaking in this particular region. And you might have also heard the term that China is trying to encircle India through its string of pearls theory, under which China has been developing various port cities and infrastructure in strategically important locations in the Indian Ocean region. So, because of this assertiveness, increasing economic might of China and the kind of infrastructure development projects that China is undertaking, which is seen as debt trap diplomacy by China, to increase its influence on these recipient countries, the world countries or the superpowers have become wary of this Chinese aggressiveness. And this had brought United States of America to refocus on the Indo-Pacific region. And that is why we all are aware that the United States of America has started the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. Also, it has created the AUKUS military partnership. So these are the broad things that are happening in the Indo-Pacific region because of the interplay of the two geopolitical powers, United States of America and China in this region. Now, what exactly is happening is that in the Indo-Pacific region, the Southeast Asian nations acquire a very important location. And majority of the times when the United States of America or India, when they have talked about the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, they have talked about ASEAN centrality. However, these countries have been reluctant in taking a clear stand on which side do they stand in this kind of geopolitics that is unfolding. So in this context, let us look at what are the areas of competition between the United States of America and China, And also let us look at what has been the response of the ASEAN nations. So this will help us in understanding what is happening in the Indo-Pacific region here. So if we look at the geopolitics of the Indo-Pacific region, it is emerging as a geopolitical theater because of the US-China rivalry. And both China and the United States of America are trying to lure the Southeast Asian countries or the Association of Southeast Asian Nation countries to their side. Now, how are these countries trying to lure the ASEAN countries towards their side? So, let us look at the areas of competition between the US and China, especially in the Indo Pacific region. Now, China, as we all are aware, that has become a dominant economic power in the Indo Pacific region because of its rapid economic rise in the past 30 years. And because of this increasing economic might, China is trying to influence through its economic might as well as its aggressiveness in the South China Sea, where China does not recognize the exclusive economic zone rights of the littoral countries of the South China Sea. Further, you should understand that Southeast Asia has been one of the top recipients of Chinese investments under its Belt Road Initiative. And Belt Road Initiative is largely seen as the rise of China and China trying to become a superpower or a very important power using its economic might. And under the Belt Road Initiative, we all are aware that China is trying to increase infrastructure projects in strategically important areas in order to access their markets and also increase its strategic presence. So, under this Belt Road Initiative, the China has been heavily investing in port and railway connectivity in various countries. Some of the examples include Indonesia and Vietnam. Now, to counter the Chinese assertiveness in the region because of its economic might, the Belt Road Initiative, and its aggressiveness in the South China Sea, the United States of America has also refocused its strategy towards Indo-Pacific region because we all are aware that in the global politics, US was the only dominant superpower till now. But the rise of China and its assertiveness and aggressiveness was seen as a threat to the global superpower status of the United States of America. In this regard, the US has been focusing on the Indo Pacific region through the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, of which India, Japan, and Australia are the members. It has also started the AUKUS military partnership, that is between the United States of America, Australia, and the United Kingdom. It has also started Blue Dot Network, which is seen as a rival to the Belt Road Initiative of China. And it has also been undertaking the freedom of navigation operations in the disputed waters of the South China Sea to counter the Chinese assertion in the exclusive economic zones of the littoral countries of the South China Sea. Now, Quadrilateral Security Dialogue is not just countering the Chinese aggressiveness in the Indo Pacific region, but it is also trying to attract the important ASEAN countries towards itself. And it is doing so by increasing infrastructure development projects in these countries. So the Quad countries have provided more than $48 billion in government-backed financing for infrastructure development in this particular region. Also, the Quad has formed an infrastructure coordination group that was launched with the focus on increasing investments on the infrastructure development in this region. So the Quad countries are not just focusing on countering the Chinese assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific region, but they are also focusing on making itself attractive for the ASEAN countries through its infrastructure development projects in order to counter the Chinese Belt Road Initiative and its economic might. However, the response of the ASEAN countries has not been uniform either towards China or towards the United States of America. So in this regard, let us look at what has been the response of these Southeast Asian nations towards the China-US rivalry that is at play in the Indo-Pacific region. So in this regard, the authors have highlighted that the Southeast Asian nations have been reluctant in taking sides between the US-China rivalry that is at play in the Indo-Pacific region. And these nations do not have a uniform approach when it comes to dealing with the US as well as China. In this regard, some of the ASEAN countries are tilted towards China, others are neutral towards the US-China rivalry, and some of the countries are pro-United States of America. For example, Philippines is sometimes seen as pro-United States of America, and this is kind of creating a rift in the ASEAN countries themselves or the member countries of the ASEAN grouping. And that is what is challenging the often touted ASEAN centrality in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, in all the discussions on the Indo-Pacific region, be it the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue or the India's Indo-Pacific strategy, all have highlighted ASEAN centrality in their Indo-Pacific strategy. But because of the lack of a uniform approach by these ASEAN countries towards the US-China rivalries, where some are taking side of China and others are taking side of United States of America, this has now challenged this ASEAN centrality concept in the Indo-Pacific region. In this regard, the author highlight that the countries like United States of America will have to focus on early completion of the promised infrastructure projects and also various other factors or the promises that the United States of America has made in the Indo-Pacific region in order to have or create this ASEAN centrality into a reality in the Indo-Pacific region. So this was all about the rivalry that is at play in the Indo-Pacific region and some of the points highlighted by the authors regarding the response of the ASEAN countries. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 8 is related to the cabinet approval that has been provided by the Sri Lankan government towards the Trincomalee oil farm tank project, which will be jointly developed by India and Sri Lanka. In this context, let us try and understand some basics of this Trincomalee oil farm project. What is its history and why is it important for India? And the point that we are discussing here will be an important topic in India-Sri Lanka relations. In the past also, some of the issues have been in news related to India-Sri Lanka and some of the projects in the Sri Lanka that India is undertaking. For example, the container terminal and the Colombo Port City project. Further, Sri Lanka is important for India because we are witnessing an increased Chinese presence in the Sri Lanka, especially in the infrastructure development sector and the strategic presence of China in India's neighborhood. In this regard, China has got a lease for the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, which is a part of its string of pearls strategy of encircling India. And that is why this clearance of the project by the Sri Lankan cabinet is important for India's strategic interests. Let us look at the details of this project and why is it important for India. So in this regard, the Sri Lankan cabinet has given the approval to jointly develop 61 tanks out of the total 99 tanks that exist at the Trincomalee oil tank farm. In this regard, it will allocate 24 oil tanks for business activities of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and will allocate 14 tanks of the lower oil tank complex already in use by the Sri Lanka Indian Oil Corporation for Indian companies' business activities. So there are two key players. One is the Sri Lanka's native Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and other is the subsidiary of the Indian Oil Corporation, that is the Lanka IOC or Lanka Indian Oil Corporation, and that will have control of the 14 tanks in this overall complex of the Trincomalee oil tank deal. So as far as the stakes are concerned, the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation and the Lanka Indian Oil Corporation will have 51% and 49% stakes respectively. Now if you look at the location of the Trincomalee, it is located in the northeastern part of Sri Lanka. Now this has also been the epicenter of the LTTE movement in the Sri Lanka. In this regard, the Indian presence in the Trincomalee has been opposed by the Sinhala nationalists of the Sri Lanka. So if you look at the ethnic or the demographic makeup of the Sri Lankan population, you will find that Sinhalas are the majority dominant community in Sri Lanka, while the Tamils are minority who are specially residing in the northeastern part of Sri Lanka. In this regard, the Indian presence has been opposed by the majority Sinhala nationalists here. Further, this location also becomes important for India because India wants to counter the Chinese presence in the Sri Lankan island, which is posing a threat to India in its neighborhood itself. Further, China is trying to encircle India through its string of pearls policy, and that is why it is trying to increase its influence through its economic might in some of the neighboring countries of India, including Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Pakistan, etc. And that is why this project becomes important, and the Indian presence in this project also becomes strategically important for India. If you look at the key aspects of this project, it was built by British first in 1930s to supply fuel to Royal Navy ships during Second World War. After this, an agreement was reached out between India and the Sri Lankan government back in 1987. However, it did not materialize on ground. So in 2003, the Sri Lanka leased out oil tank farm to India for the upgradation and commissioning of the 99 tanks in it for 35 years by signing an agreement. However, that also did not take place, and finally, this has been agreed as late as 2022. Now, looking at the importance of the Trincomalee, it is a natural harbor, and that is why it is a very important location from the economic point of view, also in the Sri Lankan island. Looking at its importance, it is also strategically important for India because we have already seen India wants to counter the Chinese presence in the Sri Lankan island. Also, India has talked about developing the Trincomalee as a regional petroleum hub when the Prime Minister of India visited Sri Lanka back in 2015 and 2017. But the issue here is that the presence of the Indian oil subsidiary has seen opposition in Sri Lanka, and this opposition has been led by the Sinhala nationalists. So, this forms an important project, or this forms an important part of the overall India Sri Lanka dynamics. To understand more about the India Sri Lanka dynamics, you can go through the DNS of 23rd December 2021, that is just a few days back. The overall dynamics of India Sri Lanka relations have been discussed in detail by Vaibhav sir. In this, he has discussed the areas of cooperation between India and Sri Lanka, including trade, culture, development, as well as strategic importance of Sri Lanka. Further, he has also discussed some of the challenges that exist between India and Sri Lanka, and especially the presence of China in the Sri Lankan island. Besides this, the ethnic issue, the fishermen related issue, and also some of the stalled infrastructure projects. And finally, he has provided what India needs to do to strengthen the India Sri Lanka relations. So, in order to understand the India Sri Lanka relations, you should go through the DNS of 23rd December 2021. With this, let's take up the next news article now. This article on page number 6 has been written in the context of the recent issues related to the non-governmental organizations or the NGOs, and especially the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, which is related to funding of the NGOs from foreign contributors. In this regard, a few days back, the Ministry of Home Affairs had denied a charity institution in India the foreign contribution under the FCRA Act. Also, recently, the Ministry of Home Affairs had extended the validity of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act registration of the NGOs by 3 months till March 31. And all these announcements or the changes that have been made by the Ministry of Home Affairs have been done under the amendments that were brought in the FCRA Act back in 2020. In this regard, on 28th December, we have covered the amendments that were brought out in the FCRA Act in 2020. What were some of the associated concerns with those which are important for us from the mains examination perspective. So let us once again revise that issue and also revise the amendments that have been brought out for the FCRA Act, and also what are some of the concerns that have been raised by various stakeholders in this regard. This article on page number 1 is regarding the NGO Missionaries of Charity, which was set up by Mother Teresa, and it has been denied foreign contribution under the Foreign Contribution Regulations Act. In this regard, the Ministry of Home Affairs has said that they had some adverse inputs and they were noticed, and that is why they are denying the right of the missionaries of charity to achieve or receive foreign funding under the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. In this regard, if you look at the General Studies paper 2, we have a topic by the name Governance in the GS paper 2. And in this particular part of governance in the General Studies paper 2, we have various subtopics like the NGOs, civil society, pressure groups, political parties, civil services, etc. And that is why, because this is related to foreign contribution to the NGOs and the FCRA, this topic becomes important for us from the mains examination perspective. Now, the government has denied the missionary of charity the access to foreign funding under the new amendments that were brought to this FCRA Act in 2020. And that is why any amendment to important acts in India are important for us from the mains examination perspective, especially if they have any impact on governance or Indian polity. Now, if you look at the question that was asked in mains 2020, it was regarding the amendments that were brought to the Right to Information Act. And we all are aware that the Right to Information Act was a benchmark act to provide accountability to the citizens regarding the functioning of the government. And that is why any amendment in the Right to Information Act will obviously have impact on the governance in the country. Either it will reduce or strengthen the accountability on the part of the government. That is why the question was, recent amendments to the RTI Act will have profound impact on the autonomy and the independence of the Information Commissioner. Discuss. So we were required to analyze what would be the likely impact of the amendments that have been brought to the Right to Information Act. Similarly, the amendments were brought out to the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act in 2020. And in this regard, various NGOs and the voluntary sector organizations have raised concerns that the amendments to the FCRA will stifle the sector and make it harder for them to operate. And that is why you can practice this particular question regarding the amendments that have been brought to the FCRA Act in 2020. And in this regard, we'll look at what are the new amendments to the FCRA Act 2020, what were the arguments in favor of bringing about these amendments, and finally, we'll look at what is the criticism of these amendments that have been brought to the FCRA Act of 2020. So that is how we will structure this discussion, which will be helpful for you to answer such question which can be asked in the mains examination. Let us look at all these aspects one by one now. So first, let us look at what are the salient features of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act Amendments Act 2020. So first provision under this is that it forbids a recipient of foreign contribution from transferring the foreign contribution to any other entity. That is, whatever money is being transferred to such NGO or voluntary sector organization will have to be used by that organization only, and they cannot transfer this amount to any other entity. This is particularly because sometimes it has been seen that these non-state actors or the NGOs divert these funds to various anti-national activities like terrorist funding or any other kind of threats to internal security. And that is why if these NGOs are receiving any amount of foreign contribution, that should be only used by them. So simply you need to understand that there are various countries which want to create internal disturbances in India. And that is why they will provide funding to various NGOs which are legitimate in India. And these NGOs will then divert the funds to the terrorist organizations, which will lead to internal security situations and problems in India. And that is why this particular feature was introduced under the FCRA Amendment Act 2020. Second important feature of these amendments was that it reduces the limit of usage of such foreign contribution for administrative expenses from presently 50% to only 20%. Further, the center can direct an organization to not utilize the foreign contributions pending an inquiry on the suspected violation. So if the government finds that there are suspected violations by an NGO of the provisions of the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, even then whatever amount that NGO has received in terms of foreign contribution cannot be used by that particular NGO or voluntary sector organization. Further, the government has mandated that the foreign contributions must be deposited in FCRA account created in specified branch of scheduled banks, which was later notified as New Delhi branch of SBI. That is only with the New Delhi branch of SBI that these NGOs can receive the foreign contribution. That is what will make it easy for the government of India to monitor the foreign contributions that are being provided to various NGOs as well as the voluntary sector organizations. Further, the center will obtain Aadhaar numbers of the key functionaries of the organizations for the approval. This is also one requirement. And then it has provided provisions for suspension of the NGO in case of non-compliance and surrender of the FCRA registrations. So these are the penalties that have been imposed, and these are some of the checks that the government has now imposed so that the funds that are received by the NGOs are not misutilized. In this regard, first let us look at what are the arguments that were there in favor of bringing about these amendments to the FCRA Act of 2020. So first argument, as we have already understood, is that various foreign countries as well as non-state actors will try to stifle the internal security situation in India, and that is why they will try to divert the funds to the various terrorist organizations or other organizations that are likely to create internal security situations. And that is why the foreign powers and non-state actors continue to take up the activities that amount to interference in the internal polity of the country with ulterior designs. Sometimes these funds are also used by the various state actors as well as non-state actors to create disruption in India by the way of funding various protests, etc. Second argument in favor of bringing about these amendments was that it will ensure effective monitoring and it will also ensure accountability of the recipient association. Further, it is argued that the NGOs are expected to grow on the strengths of their own genuine work undertaken for fulfilling societal needs. And NGOs presently lack inner democracy and they siphon off to pay the owners of the NGO very high salaries. And thus reducing limit on the administrative expenses is necessary. So as we have seen, the government has brought about limits or reduced the amount that can be used in the administrative setups because sometimes the funds that these NGOs receive are diverted to the owners of the NGOs. Further, it was seen that some NGOs are routing these foreign contributions to other entities, and that is why it was creating a threat that such funds can be used for creating problems in the Indian polity, as well as such funds can be diverted to various terrorist organizations, etc. And that is why the government has provided for approval to receive the foreign contribution for a specified purpose. And if such diversion of the funds was allowed, it will be difficult to monitor the ultimate purpose of for which these funds were being utilized. And that is why the government has set this limit of the end use of the money by these NGOs who are receiving the foreign contributions only. Further, it is being argued that the FCRA is a sovereignty and integrity legislation, and it has the overriding purpose to ensure that the foreign money does not dominate public life as well as political and social discourse in India. That is, the political and social discourse or any kind of protest or movement that takes place in India should be funded by the Indian public only if it takes place in the first place. And such protests should not be funded by the foreign countries to create instability in India. Further, it is being argued that it is difficult to monitor foreign contributions when branches are receiving the foreign contributions are spread across the country, and that is why this limit has been set up that the foreign contribution can only be received in the New Delhi branch of the SBI or the State Bank of India. Now, primarily, the government of India brought about these amendments in order to reduce the misuse of the funds by the NGOs for creating disturbances in the Indian polity as well as diverting these funds for anti-national activities. However, these amendments have been sometimes misused by the governments themselves to stifle the voices of the NGOs, which are seen as a key part for creating an accountable governance in the India and their social intervention, which is seen as very important. So in this regard, some of the criticisms are that the provisions that have been introduced by the FCRA Act are blanket in nature and they paint all the NGOs under the same brush. And that is why there are chances of it being misused at times. Further, it is wrong to color all the foreign contributions as terror financing or for illegal activities such as money laundering. And that has been the primary purpose that has been stated by the government of India for bringing about these amendments. Further, it is seen that a large number of Indian citizens who are staying abroad want to contribute for the development of their countries. And that will be hampered because of such strict regulations that have been brought out by these amendments. Further, it is seen that such kind of amendments are against equality because policy keeps making access to FDI easier. At the same time, foreign contribution regulations are being made harsher. Also, the provision of choosing only one bank and one branch in one city for the foreign contribution does not seem logical to various NGOs as well as voluntary sector organizations. Also, it is said that the center cannot have a free pass in the name of national security, and center needs to show and establish how the national security is affected and how it is subversing terrorism, etc. Further, it is being argued that many NGOs are doing exceptional work across the country and they are harmless as they have never been found to be violating any kind of legislation. And that is why such blanket provisions of FCRA Amendment Act on the NGOs and the voluntary sector organizations can be detrimental to the overall developmental works that these NGOs are carrying out in our country. So what we have seen in this discussion till now is that the government has brought out certain amendments to the FCRA Act in 2020. And these amendments were primarily brought out to stop the misuse or diversion of the funds by the NGOs for creating disturbances in the Indian polity as well as funding of terrorism. However, there have been various criticisms that have been forwarded against these amendments. And these are some of the arguments that you can use to write answers related to this practice question that has been created regarding the amendments that have been brought to the FCRA Act 2020. With this, let's take up the next news article now. Now, this article on page number 1 is related to the economically weaker section quota and the issue that has come up in front of the Supreme Court. Now, in this regard, the Supreme Court will analyze and provide a judgment in this regard. However, the issue that is there has been discussed in the DNS of 3rd January, that is just 2 days back. So you can go through the DNS of 3rd January 2022 and understand what exactly is this issue. However, what will be important for us will be the judgment that the Supreme Court will provide in the coming days. So this is a news in transition. You should keep following this news and it will become important for us once the Supreme Court gives the judgment on this particular issue. Then this article on page number 7 is related to the Raithu Bandhu scheme of Telangana. In this regard, various aspects of the Raitu Bandhu scheme has been covered in the DNS of last Sunday, or the DNS supplement of the last Sunday that was published on 2nd of January. So do go through this and try and understand the basic aspects of Raitu Bandhu scheme.
With this, we conclude today's discussion, and this is the question for the day.